Okay, let's get into explaining what time signature means and then how we put together measures and bar lines. So we're going to first start with our time signature. We discussed earlier that a time signature that we normally use is 4/4 time, just like we have here. Now I made them different colors so that way I can kind of show you what each part of the time signature does. And you notice I put it far to the left. We have the bottom number and a top number. These two numbers tell us two different things. The top number tells us how many beats per measure. Now the bottom number tells us what type of note, what symbol gets one beat. Now that that's established, we have different ways to vary this. We can put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever we want to put in there. And the bottom, we can only use so many numbers. So we are normally going to use like 1, which would be a whole note, a 2, which means that the half note symbol, the circle with the stem, would get one beat, a quarter note, which is a circle that's filled in the note head, and a stem. That would get one beat. That's what this one particularly means. And we have eighth notes and 16th notes, and you just kind of put that number there, 8 for eighth note, 16 for 16th note, 32 for 32nd notes, and so on. You can have different variables depending on what type of note you want to get one beat. With that established, we're going to try drawing bar lines. Now, bar lines are just vertical lines that separate the beat, or separate the measures. It ends the measure, like we just did now, and it starts a new one. Now, without having to draw another one, it's the beginning of another measure. We have now 1, 2 measures. I'll draw another one, and now we have 3 measures. And then finally, we have 4 measures. Now this one, this particular bar line, because I only want to have 4 total measures, I'm gonna make it a final bar line. So it's gonna have 2 lines, the second one being thicker. That is our final bar line. We have 1, 2, 3 bar lines and 1 final bar line. Why didn't I add a bar line here, you might ask? Well, the reason why I don't have a bar line there is because this is the last item you'll see before you actually start playing music or reading the music. Here we have our time signature. Before that, you'll have another thing called a key signature and then our clef that we discussed earlier, depending on what instrument or voice you sing or play. We have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 measures. 1, 2, 3, 4 measures. It's the little spaces between the bar lines that count as the measure. Now sometimes, and you should do this normally, you'll have to number your measures. You might get a piece of music that has it numbered for you, either at the bottom or the top of the measure. Normally in music, we'll probably have it numbered at the top. Measure 1, measure 2, measure 3, and measure 4. Now that we have labeled our measure numbers, we know that we discussed something, a particular rhythm on what measure, we know what measure we're talking about. You'll also notice that I wrote the numbers of the measure number at the beginning of the measure. That's really important. You could put it in the middle, you can put it at the end, I guess, but you want to keep it either at the front or right in the middle. Most likely, you're going to see it at the front, and so we're just going to have best practice, always keep it there so that we won't get confused in the future with other pieces of music. Let's take a look at beats. In this particular time signature, this is the most common time signature in music. You might also see it with the capital C in its place instead of 4/4. So we'll go over that another time. We have 4 beats per measure, because that's the number 4, and the 4 at the bottom here is a quarter note gets 1 beat, or that symbol that looks like this. So every time you see that particular note, you know it gets 1 beat, all because of what this bottom number tells us. That's very important, especially when we go on to much more difficult music. Let's look at labeling the beats. So I'm gonna draw just little hearts, and you'll notice that I'll make the beats apart and as even as I can to the left. Now I drew 4 heartbeats. I could draw 4 more here, 4 more here, and 4 more here, but I don't want to get you too confused. Let's focus on measure 1. Again, I'm talking about measure 1. We labeled it earlier. I'm going to draw my quarter notes like we have here at the bottom above those heartbeats. How many, you ask, I should draw? Well, 4, because we need 4 quarter notes per 1 beat. This is the quarter note, and we should have 4. Now, we could have another symbol that is also a quarter, but it's called a quarter rest. So quarter notes, this symbol here tells us to make sound or play music. A quarter rest, or any type of rest, is not a stop in the pulse. The beat still continues until the final bar line. It just tells you for that specific time, you don't make a sound. You are completely quiet. They look like a funky, fancy 3. So how many should I draw? Well, in this measure 2, I can draw 4, because each one of these gets 1 beat. Again, you can still have hearts underneath them if you want to label them like I did here. However, that's not necessary because I don't want you to get too confused. How do we write counts? Or how do we do counting? We do this in a sequential order, meaning we start at a 1 and we end at another number, then repeat the cycle every time we go to a new measure. So in this particular case, we're going to start from left to right. We start from the left, this is called the beginning of the music, to the end or final bar line. And we're going to use the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Why only those 4 numbers? Well, we only have 4 beats per measure, and we'll continue that pattern every time we get to a new measure. Now, we'll have it again, 1, and we'll do it again, and so on until we get to the end. And the pattern continues depending on what type of note you have and if you have a rest or not. And we'll go over that in this next video.